Hello and welcome back to the 2025 panel. I am so excited to have my joy astrologer from America joining me today. Back on the panel once again, Micheal Lennox. Thank you for joining, Michael.
Oh, my pleasure. I enjoy this every year.
So fun to have you
Yeah,
on.
thank you.
And yeah, we're exploring so many topics over the panel, and so I really hope you enjoy this conversation that me and Michael will be having today. And as usual, we want to kick off by asking Michael the astrology question, and that
Cool.
question is, what is your chart ruler, and how has that really, how has that ruled your life? Like, how have you seen that sort of be embodied
Wow.
and activated and
Oh.
landed for you? Share with us.
Okay. What a great question. So I'm a Sag rising. So my
Okay.
my chart ruler is Jupiter. I
Yes.
also have Sun in Leo and Mercury in Virgo. So in some perspectives of rulership, while the rising sign, is the sort of traditional, your chart is ruled by the planet that rules your rising sign. Um, Having Mercury in rulership and being a person who speaks, right? I think of that kind of rulership as well. But having Jupiter as my general chart rulership is interesting because I have a cardinal grand cross in my chart that includes Jupiter in the fourth, and then midheaven, moon, and Mars in the 10th, and then my nodal line in the cardinal signs of Capricorn and Cancer. And I remember talking to an astrologer when I was in my 20s who actually became my first teacher. And she's like, well, the nodes don't really count in a pattern in a chart. So that if you have a square in the chart that includes the nodes, we might not call it a grand cross. And she sat for a minute and she leaned in, closed her eyes. And when she came out, she said, nope, I'm going to call this a cardinal grand cross because your nodes are in your first and seventh house, which means it's you and your experience and what you're drawn to in a kind of tussle with a private sense of what's possible. Is what she said to me. Jupiter in the fourth, that in my own private places, I'm able to generate an idea of yummy that's important to me. And then because it's in this cardinal grand cross and opposite the top of my chart where my moon and my Mars are in my 10th house, which means my longings, moon, are for career success, and my actions are designed for career movement. And so this square cardinal cross has meant that I've had regular moments here, and here in my life when life changed radically about who I was, what I was drawn to, where I was parking myself, and what I did for a living. I'm a spiritual teacher, but that started at 40 in earnest in terms of my company. Um, but I was always doing spiritual stuff in my 20s, like on the side as a hustle. But like my last job was vice president of new business development for Playboy Enterprises,
Mm.
right? So right there is like the 10 years I was in the corporate industry, the early years of my life where I was an actor, the years where I was then sort of writing scripts and screenplays for a while. I mean, I've had so many reinventions
Mm.
because that's the nature of a cardinal cross that says my ruling planet that says I move about the world joyfully, curiously, looking to teach and learn, Sag rising, is also somebody who has used the power of Jupiter and my desires for more and different and allowed for my life to go in really wonderful new places when the cardinal cross has been activated. So
Wow.
that's to me the love of my ruling planet is that it's both a source of wonderful gifts and part of a conflictual way that I move through my life to reinvent myself through
Mm.
that square. And I'll throw one last piece in. I have an eighth house sun and Venus, which means I'm also designed to shed skins and reinvent self because that's the nature of an eighth house sun.
Mm.
So put these two things together. I would say I have been able to joyfully expand and reinvent, even though many of the reinventions were profound deaths to self, to being reinvented. It's always been positive and expansive when I've had that experience.
Wow, so Mercury in Virgo articulated. I mean, I think
Thank
that
you.
you were right to say. I like the point that you talked about with your sun in Leo and Mercury also in Virgo. I think that we've got to remember they are chart dispositors on some level. I know
That's
that
right.
you're supposed to only have one, but at the same time, I think when you've got planets in their home signs, they play a strong role. And I really
They do.
like that Michael's brought this up because I would encourage everyone else to also look for those planets that are in their home signs. That's them in their flourishing. And I love that Jupiter, of course, Jupiter is your chart ruler, and I absolutely include nodes in grand crosses and
Yeah,
trines and
yeah,
things
yeah,
because
yeah, me too.
it's such a strong, even though it's a sweet spot and it's not an actual body, there's something magical about that. So I think that you articulated that so perfectly as to how that's expanded your life and got you to where you are too. And angular, all in angular houses. Come on, like that's very, very significant. And I just remembered we've both got Moon in the 10th and we're both a Sun Venus in the 8th as well.
That's
So
right.
we
Oh,
have
that's right.
that, we have
We
that,
have
which
that
is
in common.
delicious. We do. So yeah, great, great. I love that question too. Fabulous. Thank you. So we are so excited to have you on, and we're going to talk all things Neptune and Aries today. And Michael has lots to unpack with us. So get your cuppers ready and let's start this journey because this is
All
a big
right.
transit, and this is where we're having a couple of conversations. We can't just have one conversation about Saturn in Aries, Neptune in
Right.
Aries, Uranus in
Right.
Gemini. We're going to be talking about this shit for the next couple of years, realistically, as astrologers.
Correct.
So let's keep
Yes.
unpacking the different dimensions of this. So I'm excited to have you on and share, Michael. So go ahead.
Sure, sure. Well, I have a deep personal sort of relationship with Neptune as a planet because I started my entire journey of what ultimately led to being a spiritual teacher to inspire others with dreams and dream interpretation
That's
as a
right.
teenager.
Mm,
Right at the very beginning of the journey. So
yes.
let's then talk about then what is Neptune? Who is Neptune?
Yeah.
Neptune is the planet we call the Great Spirit, um, ruled over Pisces, the domain of the unconscious, and therefore that's why dreams and Neptune are related. Pisces is that, that one sign that is just formless. It's the one sign that tells us we come through energy and spirit into a body to have an experience. And dream world is the one place that every human being has direct access to their Neptunian consciousness, their connection to the divine and spirit through dreams. And because that is so, and I have lived my life exploring dreams and hearing dreams and interpreting them and writing books about dream
Yeah.
interpretation, I have an appreciation of watching Neptune as an astrologer over the last 20, 30 years since I've been an astrologer.
Mm.
So, Neptune, slow planet, 200-year orbit. So, because he moves very slowly, he's only spending, 10, 12 years so we just say a decade or so, a rough decade of Neptune's movement through planets. And I think the thing that I want to share about Neptune's next ingress is what happened for me in my experience of perceiving things when Neptune moved into Pisces, because it
Mm.
was dramatic. One thing that I noticed was because I had been doing a lot of dream work in the like 5, 6 years before Neptune moved into Pisces in 2011, I had a good sense of what people were asking about, what kinds of dreams people were having, what were the curiosities, how many people were having precognitive experiences and how many weren't, and like what was the quality of the experience of working in the world of inspiring people to pay attention to their dreams when Neptune was in Aquarius. And it was what it was. Then in 2011, Neptune moved into Pisces, and I was gobsmacked, Tarny, because it was so dramatically different. The dreamers were more juicy. The questions became more like high level and not so like, well, dear, when you dream about exes, it's not really that they're thinking of you. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Right. So everything increased because the ruler of our spiritual connection came home for like a 12, 13-year period of immersing us all in the love of the divine. And
mm,
that's what we've all been in with all the other stuff that's been going on in the cosmos for the last 10 plus years. One thing that has been so is that each of us have had greater access to whatever it is that lights us up with beliefs, ideologies, religiosity, if you're a religious person. In other words, like, I'm a spiritual dude who was raised as a Jew with Catholic parents and Christian parents and grandparents, so my spirituality is sort of, a combo of atheism, quantum physics, and paganism.
mm,
And I
mm,
use the word God.
yeah.
Living in the United States, it's important to also mention that people who are Christian nationalists who don't really follow the teachings of Christ but have guns in their basement
Mm,
um, also have Neptune as their guiding planet. And so everyone on the planet has been expanding their beliefs and ideologies
mm,
richly, juicily, powerfully. And from a perspective that I have a way of seeing the world, and there are many, many people on the planet who see the world differently, and the world I see is Aquarian. I want to see a world where all people are cared for, full stop. That's it,
yeah.
no equivocation.
Mm.
So if we ever get there, in some ways Neptune has to be part of that,
Mm,
because it is through, if in the purity of Neptune as the God consciousness, in the sign of we are all one,
mm,
then in order for the age of Aquarius to happen, Neptune has to teach us all what we are all one really means.
mm,
We ain't getting that when Neptune moves into Aries.
mm,
We're getting the fire that will lead to that.
mm,
Okay. So why this is interesting about next year, and I'm not sure where this interview will fall in line with others that you're presenting, because you can't really talk about the power of Neptune into Aries without talking about that Pluto and Uranus will be trining in the first and second degree of air signs.
that's right.
So, Pluto, slow change, deep change, molecular change, structural change that is utter.
Mm,
Uranus, revolutionary change. Uranus has been in Taurus, honey, which means that bull has been holding back the impulses for revolution for years with
mm,
Neptune, with Uranus in Taurus, nice and slow to react, coming from love. So there's been some brakes on.
mm,
But next year, when Uranus moves into Gemini, brakes are off.
yeah.
And then you've got Pluto in the air sign of Aquarius trining the revolution bringer in the sign of ideas and sharing ideas. That's interesting too,
Mm,
that ideas will be filling the revolutionary minds of human beings, Uranus in Gemini. And now we come back to the planet of ideologies and beliefs, moving into not only a fire sign, but the sign of war.
mm,
The light of the match is beliefs, ideologies. And the thing that it's lighting up next year is slow change and fast change working perfectly well together. We're going to have to reinvent the trine. Actually, I've talked about this a lot in the last 10 years in astrology teaching, that in the old days, we thought of trines as equal to good,
mm,
but they're not. They're just equal to flow.
mm, mm,
Sometimes flow is great. If you turn
mm,
on all the hot water and all the cold water, you get yummy warm water.
mm,
But
mm,
sometimes you turn on this faucet and that faucet, and you've got water pressure that's blowing everything up.
Mm, mm,
Right. So the period of time in 2025 that's sort of juicy is like August.
mm.
August is when this what's called a grand sextile, right? That the grand sextile means three planets 60 degrees apart.
Yeah,
And so in August is when that sort of grand sextile is perfect.
yeah.
Then September, the trine is perfect. Perfect is an astro term that means the geometry is exact. For anybody who wants to say, but it's not perfect. It's perfect.
Perfect. The
Yes,
perfect.
exactly. Perfect.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah,
Perfect.
perfect. It is
Yeah.
perfected. So
Yes,
in
it's perfected.
September, the trine is still perfected, but
Mm,
Neptune sort of inches back a little bit. And for my money, I'm the astrologer that's all about the precision. So it's like
yeah.
August, it's tight. September,
Mm,
it loosens. October, it loosens a little bit more. And then by the third week in October, Neptune is back into Pisces for a little time. And then we sort of do something in 26 that's very similar,
yeah.
but we're only talking about 25. So the
Yeah.
juicy time is August, September, and October. And yeah, so that's sort of like the foundation. Like I know that we came together to have a conversation and I haven't stopped talking for 12 minutes because I'm like you put a quarter on me in me and pull the lever and I start to talk. So
It's
let me just
usually
sort of
like me
stop
anyway.
there.
That's usually me anyway, Michael. So everyone's used
That's
to it everyone's used to it listening to me. So we love this. And no, I really and also we absolutely have discussed Uranus trine, Pluto both sextiling, Neptune as the apex, and of course Saturn's there too. So I mean
yeah,
this is a really interesting configuration that we're having
yeah,
next year. And all of these transpersonal planets, shifting at the same time. Like it's really wild. And I just
really wild.
really reflecting on, you being a dream interpreter too, how Neptune has, such a strong role in your life. But just you talking about Neptune in Pisces and the dreams and this like greater access and this like expansion that we've all had too. And remember, Jupiter was there. So Jupiter sort of amplified that for a while too. And that
That's right.
really,
That's right.
and now Neptune in Aries, it's a whole, we're beginning again, we're beginning
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Jupiter, when Jupiter's in Gemini next year, he's
yeah.
sort of doing what he did in 2020,
Mm.
right? Remember, it's Pluto, Saturn,
Yep. Yep.
and Jupiter.
Yes.
Like
Mm.
when the virus spread around the planet, that was Jupiter. It's like, I represent expansion and travel. I'll take that virus everywhere.
Exactly. True. That's right. Yeah. It's buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up, buckle up.
Yeah.
Now, I'm American, obviously. I'm from the United States. And while I don't want to make this about politics, I've had a really interesting astrological sort of aneurysm when Trump got elected. Now, I am not a pop astrologer. I don't, if I ever meet with an SEO marketer, they're like, "Oh my God, you're amazing." And all you have to do is include things like in every article you write, things like Will Smith's chart
Mm.
or Donald Trump's chart. It's like, right? So I
Mm.
don't do pop astrology. I never looked at anybody's chart for the election. I didn't look at I had a friend send me Kamala Harris's chart saying, "Ooh, do you mind if I send you these things?" I was like, "Well, you can send them to me, but I'm not going to look at her chart and I'm not going to talk to you about it."
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
I don't, that's important to the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I did have a private sense that Kamala would win and that progressive shift in America would spark next year lots of violent reactions from the Christian nationalist right that would take up arms against the ongoing progressive potential in the United States. So,
Mm.
because I saw all of this fire and air in the atmosphere next year, and I look at the United States of America, I made an assumption the Democrats would win because it fit my easiest fantasy
Mm.
for how next year's geometry would make the US storyline go.
Which is also
What was
a part of the Civil War, like
Yes,
this
exactly. It
claim of
was like
civil war,
Dems
right?
win, rights get out their
Yes.
guns, and the Civil War
Civil war
explodes in the
begins. That's right.
streets, and
Yes.
President Harris will have to make a decision about putting guns on Americans for that was my fantasy. Again,
Mm-hmm.
not astrologically determined,
Mm,
determined by just my witnessing of what was happening. Well, that didn't happen.
mm,
And while we're not here to talk about why that was,
mm,
what that did for me was it certainly made me have to reevaluate how I'm going to speak about 2025 when I do my astro overview for next year, which I do usually around New Year's, where I'm going to have to say completely different things when I talk about the impact of the states. Right, my forecast won't be about US politics. It'll be about astrology, but there will be one thread. So
mm,
here's this is, I think, the valuable thing that I want to convey to your listeners based on this consideration that I'm in right now.
mm,
All of a sudden, I started to recognize this had actually started in the months leading up as I was ruminating on this, but it got really clear to me at and after the election that the hopeful possibility of peace and that age of Aquarius is also built into this grand sextile.
mm,
Sextiles are the geometry of possibility. They contain potential only. Like a trine or a square or an opposition are a guarantee of some energetic experience because that's the nature of that geometry. But 60 degrees just sits there
mm.
unless action and behavior is engaged in.
Exactly.
So now I was reminded of something that I said back in 2007 and 8 before social media helped us amplify our messages as much. I think it was just on Facebook. I said, Pluto in Capricorn is going to destroy a lot of structures on the earth, but it's going to create movements, peace and other movements of progressive change. And that Pluto in Aquarius would take those sporadic movements and coalesce them into a more singular planetary peace movement.
Mm,
I do believe that that's possible over the next 17, 18 years as Pluto traverses through Aquarius. But
mm,
it's the grand sextile and the potential expressed in the geometry that got me excited for people in the United States sort of gathering in protest and progressive movements that somehow check what's happening out there in the world to move the United States more in the potential direction of being aligned with the age of Aquarius and caring for all people. So then, if I
mm,
let go of being an American and a person in the United States concerned with politics a little bit, um, now we can get into the personal experience of all of us as human beings. All of us have Pluto, slow change, in a brand new sign.
mm,
All of us have Uranus, fast change, in a brand new sign.
mm,
All of us have belief in ideologies. This is the juiciest part for me. Pisces is the womb. Pisces is the deep, profound feminine space that's dark and formless, where everything comes from. So the birth canal of the zodiac is the 30th degree of Pisces and 0 degree of Aries. It's the most sensitive point in the zodiac,
mm,
and it represents that big bang that happens when nothing turns into something.
mm,
So, what's being born for all of us is some new way of being inspired by spirit, by your creative imagination. If you are an artist, remember that Neptune is your planet. We receive our creative imagination, impulses from Neptune.
yeah.
There's so much beauty in what Neptune brings, and in
Mm,
Aries, we'll all be fired up
mhm,
for such things.
mm. Yeah, it's
So I
definitely the
love,
birth of a new world.
yes, the birth of a new world.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's I think it's even nearly unfathomable of how it's going to play out because 2025 is just the lube, I like to call it. It's just the lubing up, It's just lubing us
Fabulous. Yeah.
up, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really not there yet.
Yeah.
It's a
That's right.
very
It's the
numinous,
brochure. But honey, I
exactly.
like the lube.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
an
yeah.
image.
Eighth house
Yeah.
stellium. We're lubing this up because we're not really going to be there yet. And again, like Michael said, like the sextile is the opportunity, like it's the helping hand. It's like here we have the helping hand if you take it, but you don't actually have to take it. So it is this unusual invitation if we want that's there. But 2025 is the prequel, which is the loop. It's like we're showing you something, but then we've got to come back because we're really
Yes.
not done yet.
Yes.
We're
Uranus
not
and
done
Neptune
yet.
will go back. And
Yep.
yeah. So we'll have to meet here next year
Yes, exactly.
to
So we
talk about 26
that's right.
and what's
And
going to unfold afterwards. But you're absolutely right. An August, September, October preview.
yeah, absolutely. And then, obviously Saturn, we've spoken about Saturn in the panel, but Saturn's also involved in this as well. Um, there's a lot that's dissolving still, I think, with Neptune in Aries in a way that Aries is our self and our identity and all that we've known. And so
That's right.
everyone's been in
That's
this
right.
collective soup, right? Like we've been
Yes.
talking about this collective soup and the frog in the pot, as one of my other astrologers said, just boiling and bubbling away. But something also interesting that I wanted to talk about, like not that I'm into sort of politics and stuff, but also the USA is going through not only their Pluto return, but Chiron return, right? So there's like a whole lot of deep
Yeah.
unearthing and wounded stuff sort of presenting. Because I always feel like the collective unconscious is shown in politics. It doesn't matter who anyone likes or
Yeah,
doesn't
well,
like,
it's an out
it's
projection. It
that's
is a
right.
complete shadow projection.
That's
Listen,
right.
I have to interrupt our conversation because of a technical problem.
Mm.
My setup here is telling me that I'm out of battery power, but my laptop isn't battery operated. It's plugged in. So I have to figure out what happened. Hang on, because
Okay.
I'm literally about to lose power.
Okay, let's just pause this. And we're back. And we're back. We're all
Yeah.
sorted. Everything's sorted.
So
Yeah, so
yeah, in
there
fact,
is this, collective unconscious shadow, like you said, that's really, and that's Neptune too, right? We can't forget that Neptune
absolutely.
is deception and shadow.
Neptune invented the idea that what we see out there is a projection of what's in here. In fact, Donald Trump in the United States of America is the archetype of the narcissism of the United States. He's a perfect avatar for that. And it's not about Donald Trump, it's about the collective. He's just the figurehead. But
That's
what's
right.
fascinating to me in the way that I think that consciousness has a sense of humor
Mm,
is that, yes, the Pluto return of the United States is like any returning planet, a moment when that planet's consciousness is amplified and elevated. Like your solar return is your birthday, you're thinking about yourself. And a Pluto return, we're thinking about what's hidden, what's below, what's the shadow, what's the power struggle, right? And a
mm,
country created on a myth and a lie that all men are created equal, which didn't include women or men with no property or people of color and slaves. Everybody knows the
mm,
story. So that Pluto return happened when Pluto was at 27 Capricorn as the sort of peak of it a couple of years ago. And so the 28 and 29 cap was still part of the Pluto return. But then it was like over when Pluto moved into Aquarius, but that motherfucker
mm,
backtracked into Capricorn just in time
mm.
for the United States election. Only 2 months.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, it's
So
just
to me,
showing that it's not over till it's over.
that's right.
Mm.
And it's a projection.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the deepest final karmic assignment, karmic assessment, karmic crumbling just before. I mean, we're right in the midst right now as we record this of Pluto just about to ingress into Aquarius,
That's
where
right.
he will stay for 20 years, like so we're right on the
Yes, like
precipice.
No, truly, it's like in the next day.
Yeah, it is. It's
Um,
literally in under 24 hours. Yeah, I love it.
the Chiron return piece is, I think, reflective of that. The United States is mentally ill. The problem with men and mass shootings and the gun craze,
Yeah.
that's a wound.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, the world is going through its own purge. And, since 2020, I've been speaking about like, and it's just like a reflection of the Renaissance, which is when 500 years ago, when we had the Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, all of those, when that happened, we have now entered a decade that is like a renaissance, like being squeezed through the cosmic eye. And 2025, as Austin Coppock and Chris Brennan from the astrology podcast, who I love, said 2025 is the halftime show, And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't watch NFL, is it? Like that sort of
Yeah,
football. My
football. Yeah,
husband does. He's an NFL crazy, but there's a halftime show, right? And the halftime show is usually very fucking highly productive and it's over the top. Maybe it's got famous people singing or whatever. That's 2025. We are smack bang in the middle of the 2020s and it's a show. Like it's a showdown. Like this shit is happening. And yeah, it's like I'm still just in this curiosity. I love having these conversations with everyone that's been on the panel so far. I'm nearly ready to, get this out. I've nearly finished interviewing everyone, but it's lighting me up because it's exciting. There is exhilaration, but there is also trepidation. We have to also be very aware and be very discerning. Neptune in Aries is going to dissolve a lot of great things, but also dissolve a lot of boundaries and that sense of sovereignty even, it's like, oh, I'm clinging on to that, or like, who
yeah,
am I, this is the scrambled egg moment of Neptune and Saturn still working together, one of solidity and structure and the other dissolving everything as we know it. And we've spoken about the last time these two come together in Capricorn, the Berlin Wall, like that was a true signification of what Neptune and Saturn can do together. And
that's
it's
right.
it's a lot,
That's right.
it's a lot.
Saturn brings Neptune's power right down to boots on the ground, things that are happening
Yes,
on the Earth
exactly.
because he's a
Yeah,
social planet. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
It's big times. And so what would like on a micro level, Neptune and Aries for you, on a micro
Yeah.
level? Yeah.
For me, it's in all of my teaching that, like, I look out at the world's on fire. I don't know how
It
to help.
is. Yeah.
Right? But I do know how to help people put the fires out that are inside of them. And in the
Mm,
spirit of projection, the more people who live on the planet free of fires internally, the less fire we'll have in the outward projection. So,
mm,
my message to everybody is no matter what next year brings you, your spiritual practice will save you. And Neptune in Pisces is nice and marinating for spiritual practice. And anybody with discipline and focus has been able to dive into Neptune in Pisces and take advantage of the deep spiritual connection that that can bring. I think that Neptune in Aries will invite everybody to step up and start a kind of practice of spiritual connection because he's now in a sign that hits every body, B-O-D-Y, body on the planet by being in the sign of Aries, which invented that we have a body and are here in form.
It's the be your own hero.
That's right.
Mm,
Fabulous.
mm, mm. Oh, well, I mean, obviously, we're going to continue to digest and talk about this over the coming 18 months. And we get preview and insight as we all get, lubed up in 2025 with all of these, fascinating ingresses, which is the, as one of the other astrologers said, a cha-cha-cha, in and out, right? But I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing passionately about, the collective stuff, which is important because the world is on fire. And I love that you've sort of landed and ended that with, but, this is about us too,
Yeah. Yeah.
coming back to the self and the body and the physical. And Neptune in Aries is that spiritual warrior at the end of the day,
That's right.
Choose your battles wisely.
And don't run with the scissors.
Hot tip. Hot tip.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael.
Oh,
It's all
Downey, I love that
such
we
a
do this every year.
such a
Yay.
pleasure to
Mhm.
connect and reconnect with you and chat with you. Thank you so much for being on the panel. And of course, if you're not all over Michael's work on Instagram and his podcast and all of his, he's amazing. And so, of
Oh,
course,
thank
go and
you.
check out Red Robe Astrology. It's really funny. I've got actually a maroon colored dressing gown, and I had it on one time, and I was doing a live, and someone's like, "Oh, red robe," and I'm like, "Oh no, no, mine's not red, mine's
Oh my
maroon."
God,
Yeah,
I love that. Oh,
it was
I'm
so funny.
excited to hear that.
I loved it. It was so
Thank
funny.
you, honey.
Yeah, love your work, Michael. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
your
sweetie.
time today. And I look forward to chatting to you again and journey well.
Thank you, sweetheart. You too.
Thanks everyone for listening. Bye.